Welcome, Leavenworth citizens, to our City Commission study session. Today is Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. Please turn off or silence in this room here all cell phones during the study session. Meetings are televised every day on Channel 2 at 7 p.m. at midnight and available for viewing on YouTube. Due to the restriction of social distancing and prohibition of gathering of 10 or more people to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, the City Commission study session will not be open to the public. In accordance with Kansas Open Meetings Act, the meeting can be viewed live on Channel 2 and, as I've said, via Facebook Live. Questions on agenda items will be read during the discussion on that topic. Submit your questions to cwilliamson@firstcity.org no later than 6 p.m. on April 21st. There have been no questions submitted at this time for this particular study session. Members of the public wishing to receive agenda notifications can contact the city clerk, cwilliamson@firstcity.org, to be added to the agenda email distribution list. Agendas are also available for viewing on the city website at www.leavenworthkansas.org. And today, in terms of the city commissioners here, we have the Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Bowder. We have Commissioner Preisinger and Commissioner Leonhard. They are joining us remotely, but they can be seen. We're using the GoToMeeting app so everyone can see one another and conduct our business for this meeting. Commissioner Wilson is not present for this meeting. We have 4 topics for our study session this evening, and the first one is the comprehensive plan kickoff with Shockey Consulting. So I'll turn it over to either the city manager or Ms. Shelby Ferguson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Commission, just briefly, the city started the 2030 comprehensive plan earlier this year. We are entering phase 3 of that project, so we thought that it would be useful to have Shockey Consulting brief the commission on where they are, what the next steps are, and to cover the 2030 comp plan to this time. So we have Shelby Ferguson and Sheila Shockey from Shockey Consulting who will make a presentation tonight.
Hello.
Thank you so much. This is Sheila Shockey with Shockey Consulting, and I just want to make sure everybody can hear me.
We can. We hear you loud and clear, at least here in the
Great.
chambers.
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We have been working with Julie and your team at the city on the comprehensive land use plan, and we're calling it Leavenworth 2030 First City Future Forward. And our project manager, Shelby Ferguson, is going to walk you through project description and just update you a little bit. And then we have some questions that we'd like to ask you. And then we'll follow up with some additional meetings with city commissioners and continue with our study of the community. But then we'll be shortly kicking into the community engagement phase as some of the COVID recommendations are lifted.
Okay.
So Shelby?
Sure. Thank you, Sheila. As you mentioned, this is Shelby Ferguson with Shockey Consulting. Also, just making sure everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Think so? Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and get started. Everyone should be able to see my screen. So this was just part of the packet that we provided to you. As Sheila said, we just kind of want to give you an update of what we've been doing over the last few months, working with constant contact with city staff to get things started for the project, branded. That way, whenever something goes out material-wise, it has the Leavenworth 2030 brand. So you'll see that logo here, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but that's something that we've been working on with staff and within our team also, is just to get that tagline and branding set for the project. And then also, in addition, working through existing conditions, starting to review existing plans and what is involved in those, and where we can go with continuing on with the recommendations and goals and objectives that are within those, and how we can fold those into the comprehensive plan update. So as Sheila mentioned, I'll just kind of briefly go over project description and then just an update of where we're at within the planning process. So as many of you know, we were selected and kicked off back in January to do a comprehensive plan update of the 2011 comprehensive plan of the cities. This is a 10-year outlook on the update. So while the existing comprehensive plan is fairly recent, we understand that there have been extensive changes and updates that are needed within just development and redevelopment and within the market and conditions. So that's what we're here to do, is to look at those items and more within the city and the existing plans and conditions of the city. So we're working through that with the lens of looking forward 10 years and what those goals and objectives would be for where Leavenworth and the community want to be by 2030. So moving on, as I mentioned and Sheila mentioned, we went with the tagline Leavenworth 2030, First City Future Forward. So we wanted to take a spin off of the First Cities representation that you already have in your tagline, and that we're looking forward to the future. And so then we also kind of spun off of the current website colors and things like that and went with this just color scheme. So this page right here would be our project identity. Everything that we create, including the final deliverable plan, will be within this color scheme and these fonts, including the logo you see before you. So that's something that we've been working on and getting all of those templates set up and for what that'll look like. And then I'm going to pass this back to Sheila to talk about the budget, just what each phase will include and the dollar amounts.
Great, thanks, Shelby. So we do have a 5-phase process that we use. As Shelby said, we started the phase 1 project launch in January, and we've worked through all of those items. We have a project management plan and communications tool that we're using to work back and forth with the city and gathering information and having conversations. And we're into phase 2, which is the discovery phase. That's where we're really learning everything about this, the story of your community, and reviewing those existing plans and looking at how those relate to today. We're also doing a lot of background data research and study of the community and developing maps that represent and help tell the story of the community, and conducting a market analysis, which will be kind of a short-term and a long-term more market analysis because of just all of the recent economic changes over the past 2020 first quarter. And then we're going to be putting together some information about different trends that will impact the community in the future. And one thing that we're seeing is how these trends are really changing quickly and impacting communities. Just with in the recent months, the entire globe is now on video conferencing, using technology in new ways. And so we'll be thinking about those things as we plan the community in the future, and how technology and other disruptors may change the needs and how the community is actually developed and redeveloped in the future. And then in phase 3, what we're doing is working with your community, with elected officials, city staff, and other community leaders to really formulate what is the consensus around the community's future. So we'll be developing a vision, values, goal statement, and specific strategies and policies. And we're doing that in a variety of different ways to make sure that we represent the and get a representative input from the entire community. We also do track that based on people offering up their demographics, and we also track the geography to make sure that we cover the entire geography of this as well when we're doing this engagement process. And likely we're going to be, we always have been doing our engagement both online and in person. And likely we'll be doing that same type of process in the future. And kind of keeping, you know, the kind of the changes and the techniques that will be needed in the future, they will probably evolve. And we're, you know, working with staff to try to evolve that and put the time frame together so that we do get that coverage of all of the community. Some of the things that you could be looking for, commissioners, is we will be launching what we call a Foresight Hub. And that is a web page or website that has curated articles about local government and community development issues. And that will be available to not only key stakeholders, but for the entire community to just get some background information about what other best practices are happening across the country and just what trends and changes are occurring and how that might impact Leavenworth in the future. We will be doing a lot of online surveying from that site as well as linked to your city's website. We typically have great response and expect that as well from your community, and we'll be driving people to the website to find out more information, get those educational materials about best practices, but also to complete those online surveys. We'll also have what's called a conversation kit, and that's where we can meet with people in smaller groups where they can basically self-meet and have a meeting at home or in their office, or they can have it in small groups of community organizations. And they're providing a lot of the same information that we would have with these directions in this kit that they can share with us, and we can tabulate all of that and show you the results of those smaller group conversations. We will be at community events, and we're hoping that the commissioners work with us on that because it's a great way for you to reach out to your community and engage with them on a one-on-one basis. And then we'll be holding some focus group meetings with key stakeholders that are representative and diverse backgrounds to make sure that we're really hearing from all voices. And then finally, we go into crafting the plan. That process takes a couple months because we're going back and forth with the commission and with the city staff and planning commission to make sure that we have the right language and we're representing the desires of the community. And then there'll be the fifth phase, which is the adoption phase, where we do a presentation and then deliver the final plan that can be used by the community. It's a marketing piece for your community, but it's also something that you will use for decision making going forward. I'll turn that back over to Shelby unless anyone has any questions about the budget and deliverables.
Commissioner Leonhardt, I do have a question for you,
Sure.
Sheila. Do you feel, I know there's a timeline that is on this. Do you think that's going to be delayed at all because of the COVID-19 crisis going on? More limitations or?
As I said, we have worked, we've kind of revised that timeline based on the COVID-19. And when more data and information is available from the public health agencies, we will be adjusting that as well. So we want to make sure that we get good participations from the community. As I said, we have been doing a lot of online things that work pretty well in communities, but there's nothing like that face-to-face conversation with people. So if we do need to adjust it, we will be flexible and able to accommodate that as well. But we'll be kind of guided by your staff and public health officials on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Turn that back over to Shelby.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sheila. So we'll move into, this is more of a graphic that details out everything that Sheila was just discussing with you of those phases and what those deliverables will be. So as she mentioned, we're in phase 2. We've already completed phase 1. So we've provided a project management plan, the public engagement plan, which I'll show you a graphic of the public engagement plan here in just a few minutes. the communication plan and website content. So that's where all that branding happened, and just getting things in line of roles and responsibilities, how we're setting up our communication and things like that. And we're in the phase 2 and part of phase 3 right now, where we're initially kicking off engagement, starting to think about who will engage, how we'll engage them, setting up those focus group meetings. And then within the phase 2, as Sheila mentioned, we're reviewing existing plans, reviewing the existing plans and looking at data and creating that snapshot, which then also leads into those trend cards that really help us understand where your community is headed and what it is right now. So then within phase 3, we'll continue to engage with that online survey that Sheila mentioned, focus group meetings, and more meetings with yourselves. And then in phase 4, that's where we craft the plan. We'll have additional workshops and meetings, whether those are online or in person. That's where we'll start to really dig down and prioritize items and just make sure that we've got the language the way it needs to be, and that we're hitting all points and topics within the plan. And then in phase 5, that's where we'll have the final plan for review, and then also go to present that to the Planning Commission and then yourselves for adoption. And as she said, we're still looking to hit that deadline of end of the year with that, but depending on the direction that we do get from city and public officials, that may be altered slightly. But so that's just a little overview of the budget deliverables, but within a timeline. So then we would like to talk to you all as we really get into the stakeholder engagement piece of phase 3. We're identifying the critical questions that we want to identify during this process. And we'd really like to get your feedback and input onto the list in front of you. These are items that we will want to include in the plan, but we want to know who should we be involving in these discussions. And then what information may be available to inform this discussion, if you have any. So this would be an open discussion for you all to help us with, or if it's something that you need to think on a little bit, we'd be happy to, as we do our one-on-ones, that's something that we can discuss further also, and have that constant contact with you. So we're looking at what is the vision for the city, who are the individuals that we may need to contact for that, the goals and strategies, how we'll measure progress towards those goals, what the housing needs are, and if there's any gaps in price points, what keeps us from building infill housing within Leavenworth, and how do you see that we should revitalize neighborhoods, what the new housing need is, and the need for quality affordable housing. And then we get into a little bit of the history and the culture and how the city is preserved, and what makes your community unique, and what attracts people to come to your downtown, and the types of jobs. So we'll get into employment and labor workforce and really start to look into the economic drivers within Leavenworth. And so we would really like to know who we talk to, if you have anyone specific for the jobs that are needed, what types of commercial repurposing could there be within the community, transportation needs and infrastructure needs, and then how employers are attracted to your community with good paying jobs, and then the education system, how to strengthen it, what opportunities are there, and then we get into community health and what support there is for that, and then also just how to make your community more attractive, and any other topics that you feel would be important to highlight within the plan. So again, these are just kind of a top list of things that we'll identify, and looking to identify as we work on the planning process. So I'd open it up to if you have any thoughts on those specifically.
This is Mike, the mayor. So these items on this discovery and analysis chart, they are things that are associated with phase 2, the discovery, which I know you've begun, and I think it's continuing, correct?
Correct.
And then, so that's going to overlap with phase 3, which is creating consensus. And so that's my understanding. Is that a fair comment or a fair observation on my part? As far as phase 2 kind of overlapping with phase 3, the creating consensus, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they do go hand in hand. So we start to work on, or we're working on phase 2, which we're pulling all the information. We received information from the city staff, and so we start to look at that, and then we develop materials of this is the existing snapshot of what your community has and looks like. And then from there, we start to go into the engagement portion of these critical questions and having those focus group discussions, and then also workshops with yourselves and the planning commissioners. And then we can really get an understanding of what the priorities are and where to move forward with the understanding of the information that we gathered from phase 2.
And I know
This is,
oh, I'm sorry, go.
I just wanted to add to that. We're interested at this point. The data will help us understand what some of your issues are. The interviews that we'll be having with you will help us with that as well. And so we like to kind of begin with the end in mind. We like to know what questions should this plan answer.
Sure.
And so that's what this list is, just kind of a beginning of a list of critical questions to answer. And then we take that and we decide who do we need to speak with, who has some input into that. And oftentimes it's the entire community, but it could be specific group like the Economic Development Council or the Chamber, or it could be the downtown groups, those types of folks. So, and then, what information do you want to make sure we consider and think about during that? So this is just kind of a tool that we use to help in that discovery process.
In terms of the focus groups, and regardless of whether they're going to be done in person or whether more and more of them are going to be done online, which I think will probably be the case. Generally, how many focus groups are you looking at, and and how many people would be in a focus group, and I just like a little bit more information on the kind of what you're looking at as far as the approach as far as the focus groups.
Yeah, I can help with that. So oftentimes, sometimes in strategic planning or in planning, you may have a focus group be a group of people who are just looking at one particular issue, and then they are formed around that, and then they disband. What we're doing is we're having them focus on particular issues, but be the same group. And the reason that we're doing that is that these issues are all interconnected. And we think that when you do planning, it's important to think about jobs and housing together, and jobs and infrastructure together, and housing and infrastructure. So we call it a focus group, but it's just an empaneled group of the community that's a representative of the community, but has maybe some specific knowledge of these particular types of issues, either firsthand or because of their work that they do. And so we're looking for assistance kind of empaneling that group, but also making sure that we're asking them to focus on the right questions.
Is that group the Stakeholder Group? Is that group known as the Stakeholder Group? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to. That's fine.
I have a
Go ahead, Commissioner Bowder.
I just have questions. So all of this, this page on discovery and analysis, so are these the types of questions that we need to be prepared to answer when you have our meetings the next couple of days? And are then things coming out of that? Is that what we're doing?
So we will be asking you, are these the right questions? Are there other questions that you think you would like to have answered as a part of this process? who should be involved in those, and then we want some initial ideas from you about, well, I think we need to look at this, or I think we should be considering these ideas. And so it's kind of like, are we asking the right question?
Okay,
What
I see.
other information do we need? And then do you have some kind of preliminary thoughts on?
Okay, thank you.
We don't want to give you too much homework right up front.
Ms. Shockey, then can you just very briefly describe the primary role and the responsibilities of the stakeholder group? Because I think that's a group of, 15 or 16 people from the community. But you've done this before in your previous studies, so I was just trying to get an idea of the kind of their major role and their major responsibilities as far as the stakeholder group.
Yeah, so, the ask that you would be giving them would be, will you work as a group to take information that's available to you that we will provide and think about how that impacts the entire community today, but also into the future. So their role is to really think about how some of these trends and how much this current data, how do those impact and what are the kind of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the information that's provided. And then how do we, listening to some of the community's input in terms of the vision and the goals, how do we translate that into language that's meaningful and helpful to the community? So they're basically kind of working with us to identify issues, to develop those draft goals and objectives for consideration by the City Commission and Planning Commission workshop in their workshops, and then having a final review of the document, kind of thinking about it from the community's perspective prior to it going to the City Commission again in a workshop to kind of work out all the details of it. I hope that makes sense.
No,
Does that answer your question?
No, that does answer my question. How about, I think all the commissioners are aware of some other citizens that, probably will not be part of the official stakeholder group, but will there be opportunities for citizens who really, have something to contribute, have been thinking about a particular issue or a question or questions for them to give some meaningful input to this process? Will that opportunity exist?
Yeah, so we'll have an opportunity for them to sign up online to receive information about the same kind of information that the focus group participants are receiving. Also, they can provide feedback or comments to that and participate in online surveys. And then we'll be promoting in-person engagement opportunities for them to participate in. So there's Shelby can kind of go to the next page if you would. Okay. It has the different community engagement activities that we're thinking about. And those are kind of one-way communication where we're sending out information to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page. But there's also a lot of two-way communication in opportunities, as I said, that I hope the commissioners will participate in, which would be popping up at some community events. We'll have some displays and interactive kiosks at different locations, such as City Hall, the library, and other locations that you think would be have a lot of foot traffic. These conversation kits are a great way for community members to participate in smaller groups. So in other communities, we've used this, and somebody did one at their family reunion. Another group said, I'm having Sunday dinner with my kids. They're going to come over. We're going to do this conversation kit. Others have board and commissioners do that type of work, Parks and Rec and other municipal arts and those types of things. And then there's going to be community or commission workshops that, I know you have good outreach in terms of community outreach, each commissioner. And so there's opportunity there to share information about where the current thinking, getting feedback. And then there'll be a community workshop. I can't really see that from the thing. If you could scroll up, Shelby. There we go. Yeah, so I think kind of towards the 2/3 into the engagement process, then we would plan on having
Okay.
a community workshop where we're asking people for more specific information. And all the activities that we're doing up to that point, we'll be recruiting people to participate in that workshop.
Okay, that makes sense. That sounds good. Do my fellow commissioners have any questions for, up to this point, for Ms. Shockey or Ms. Ferguson? Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, do you have?
Commissioner Preisinger, do you have a comment or a question?
No, it's Commissioner Preisinger. I don't have
Okay.
any comments now. I'm looking forward to the interviews or our discussions
Yep.
tomorrow. At least my discussion tomorrow. I know that I'm meeting with each one of the commissioners individually. So I'm looking forward to that discussion tomorrow.
Great.
Ms. Shockey, this is Mayor Mike again. In terms of the survey, what's your approach? Are you going to try to maximize the number of respondents, or are you going with a random sample? How many questions, like 10, 20? I'm just trying to get an idea for the online survey.
Sure. So oftentimes we do shorter online surveys, open to anyone who wants to answer those. We do make efforts to try to maximize the participation in that.
Okay.
It will not be a random sample survey.
Okay.
That's a longer process.
Okay.
It usually doesn't work as well for comprehensive plan issues. So
Okay.
we do encourage communities to do those types of random sample surveys, and I know a lot of them around the region do. But for this, it's kind of there are shorter
Sure,
surveys on
that's good.
topics throughout the process.
And is it one survey, or will it be a kind of a series of some smaller number of surveys?
A series.
Okay. And when would the first one, what's the time frame for the first one going out? Do you have like a week or a month, or?
We're looking at July right now
Okay,
to start those.
okay.
I think, Mayor, were you asking how long the duration of the survey, how long it'll be available?
Yeah, I just wanted to get an idea of, and the shorter I think these surveys are, the better. Are they gonna, and so it's not just one generalized survey. I mean, they'll be trying to get some feedback on certain areas or certain things that we found in the discovery and the analysis phase of trying to get feedback from our citizens. Is that a good way to describe it? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to be clear as far as that goes. So it's not just one large survey with 20 questions, and so I just wanted to understand what the concept was for, and that's fine. I think that's good, and hopefully we'll get a good response rate. And what else do you have? I think we have a pretty good idea of what's going on here. If you have anything else, Ms. Ferguson or Ms. Shockey, as far as the?
I was saying, no, that pretty much wraps it up.
Okay.
For what we wanted to brief you on and just give you an update as to where we were at. As previously mentioned, we do have, I believe almost everyone scheduled for their one-on-ones. We actually have 2 kicking off tomorrow morning. So I'm looking forward to speaking with each of you individually and just going from there. And so once we speak with everyone, we'll a summary of our discussions and work with city staff on that, and then move forward. And following our discussions, we will also then provide a online survey to each of you just to allow us to get a little bit more open-ended information from you also following that.
That's good. Yeah, I got my reminder today, because my first one-on-one is for Thursday. Now, will you send? We're going to do it via Zoom, right?
Yes, we will.
So are you?
And if anyone has issues with that, or has a preference of if there's something prefer to use GoToMeeting or something like that, we can look into that. We just have been utilizing on our end Zoom as one of our online.
Zoom?
tools.
Zoom is fine with me, but will you be sending us a URL to click into, or?
Yes, it was in your invite,
Oh, okay.
but I can resend also to you
If
do
you
not
would
receive it.
resend, because I somehow missed it. It was probably there, but I somehow missed it. But
Okay,
but-
yes, when the calendar invite comes to you, it should have been included in the message portion of the invite, but I will be sure to resend
Okay.
yours.
That sounds good.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions. My fellow commissioners, any other questions or comments?
Nope, looking forward to it. This is Commissioner Bowder. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Leonhard. Yeah, thank you for the update, and I'm looking forward to talking to you both tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Have a good rest of your
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
All right, you too.
Have a nice
Thank you.
evening.
Take care.
Be well.
Bye-bye. Okay, moving right along, we have the next item on the agenda is Convention and Visitors Bureau semi-annual report.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, we do have Christy Lee joining the meeting to do our update of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. There she is, so I'll turn it over
Hi.
to Ms. Christy Lee.
Hi, Christy. Ms. Lee,
Hi.
how you doing?
Hello, commissioners. Good evening. Nice to be here via the go-to meetings and that. Taylor's going to be bringing up my presentation for you tonight. It's going to kind of just be a brief overview here and that. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, please. I'll be kind of discussion points, I guess, from me, are just going to do a little bit overview of the travel industry, and then also of the Leavenworth update as we kind of go through this whole COVID-19 downturn here. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So the travel industry in general, obviously you've all been looking and reading all about this for the last month or more now. So the travel industry in general, I think, has been really one of the industries that's been hardest hit by this shutdown and that. So they did issue a global level 4 health advisory back when this all started and that, which kind of has just been escalating since then. So a lot of great information is out there and being shared right now, which is something that's unique, I guess, to our industry, just because usually they charge quite a bit for this kind of research. So trying to take advantage of some of this while we can, because a lot of these different organizations are offering it for free. The link that's shown right there, the ustravel.org tool COVID-19. If you ever get, I didn't want to bog down the whole presentation with a lot of stats and statistics and stuff like that, but a lot of these research giants are really doing an amazing job as far as tracking where we're at with consumer sentiment, and that Adara is tracking consumer behavior. Arrivalist, if you get a chance, call, and you would be more interested in that, let me know, because Arrivalist is one of those research deals that pings your phone whenever you're moving, and if you have your location turned on in that. So Arrivalist is offering the research as far as road trips, so who's traveling within 50 miles, who's traveling within 100, and you can click on our state, you can click on Kansas, the immediate surrounding states, just to see where people are going. So I guess using that tool moving forward, it's going to be able to kind of tell us when people are traveling a little bit farther than 50 miles.
Sure.
And when that starts to break, basically. So it's just kind of really interesting to kind of keep tracking some of that stuff. Longwoods, they're offering traveler sentiment graphs. Sojourn, there's Meredith Travel, US Ports. I mean, they're all really getting out there and offering a ton of information that we wouldn't normally have. So please let me know if you're interested in that. Still reading statistic-wise that they're thinking that the overall industry is going to be down 5% this year. So it's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Followed by National Travel and Tourism Week. We are still, I don't know if you want to call celebrating it, but the theme this year is the spirit of travel cannot be broken, and that, so we had planned on doing the Max Social and all that over at the riverfront, but obviously that's gotten changed in that. So we'll probably just run a social media, get out and check out I guess what we're going to try and do is do something with our historical markers around town, just so it's going to be an outside event then, and obviously people can keep 6 feet between them and all that, and just do like a selfie in front of one of the historical markers in particular, and probably win a prize or something. So we'll work something out, but it's obviously going to be social media driven this year, and try and celebrate it as best we can. Another deal, the Real ID Act has been out there for a while now, but it's still kind of surprising because I think like 33% of the American public are still don't know that this is happening or going to happen in that. So hopefully everybody here is prepared for it. But as of October 1st, 2020, the Homeland Security will implement the last phase of the Real ID Act, which is definitely going to require all people traveling, all Americans traveling that are going through airport security to have the ID compliant driver's license and or another form of acceptable ID to travel. So hopefully, if you haven't done it by now, but yes, sir? Go ahead.
I believe, I could be wrong, this is Commissioner Preisinger, I believe that the Real ID Act has been extended for 1 year to October 1st, 2021. I believe, I'm unsure on that, but
I was looking all over to see if I could find it made sense that they were going to extend it. So you did, do you remember which site you saw that on, or?
Commissioner Preisinger again, I just heard it on a newscast that the Homeland Security was extending to October 1st, 2021, because as you know, most driver's license bureaus are closed and things like that. So you may want to verify that. I don't think it's a big issue right now, but I think there might be an extension.
I'm sure it makes sense that there would be. So yes, I looked for that and I couldn't find it. So I must have just skipped over that one. But that's good though. I mean, because obviously, like you're saying, a lot of the driver's license places are closed, and so yeah, it would definitely cause some strain on some of the people out there. So next slide, please. Just some Leavenworth statistics then from 2019. So the estimated visitors to the city were 214,075. And again, these numbers are derived from the visitation at the CW Parker Carousel Museum and that, and using economics from the Visit KC site, as well as far as how many people are visiting museums and that when they do travel and that. So that's kind of where those numbers are coming from. Below that is just some of the distribution and impressions and that from our marketing campaigns that we did last year and that. So, and our visitors guidebooks and how many were distributed for that. And we currently are getting them out for this year. So hopefully when we get back in the office, we'll start we're still sending out individual requests, obviously, but hopefully we'll be able to drive around town and distribute a lot more of them. So just some information then on our website, top referrals are travelks.com, our online campaigns that we've been doing, and then the city's website as well are some of our top referral sites to our website. The budget expenditures up there in the right-hand corner are just the CVB's budgets. That doesn't include any of the other items that come out of the Transient Guests Tax. So that's just CVB only. On top of the top 5 pages on the website that are still getting looked at the most often is our events page, our home page, obviously the prison, our attractions, and then the USDB. We're still working with George and then Pete at the USDB as far as trying to get some phone numbers or something that will work or that are answered when people have questions, and that when they call us a lot to see if we can help them find certain people and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of a little bit of a clearinghouse right now because some of the phone numbers aren't working. So hopefully we can get that straightened away.
But,
Some of
hey,
the,
and Ms. Lee, this is Mayor Mike. In terms of the USP and the USDB, I mean, there are no tours or anything of those prison facilities, are there?
no, they're not, no.
Okay. So these are just,
No, but
these are just
we have
inquiry,
them on-
these are just inquiries about, I don't know, somebody who might be in there or just trying to find out some information with regard to those two prison facilities?
Correct. Usually it has to deal with inmates, families calling in, how do I reach this inmate or that? How do I get in touch with somebody?
Okay.
And actually just yesterday or whatever, I got an email from an inmate who had been discharged or that, and he
Okay.
wanted to change his information on his W-2. So why they're calling, I mean, we
Right.
definitely need, hopefully can get them some phone numbers that they can call and get some of
Okay.
their answers.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then,
This is Commissioner Leonhard, and I
Yes.
have a question for you. On the estimated visitors to Leavenworth, I noticed 2018 was 240,900. Do you know why it dropped in 2019?
when I visited with Tony on that, he actually couldn't really say too much, because we addressed that, I guess, with Tony over at the CW Parker. And the only thing he said is that some of the parties were down, a little bit of some of their parties were down and that, but it just didn't seem like it would have been that much. But I guess that's what we came up with, is that it wasn't necessarily the visitors so much as it was local, I think, driven as far as not having a lot of their facilities used for parties like they usually do, a lot of birthday parties and stuff like that, and reunions and that were down. So bookings, I guess, were down at the carousel.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. And occupancy for 2019, very happy to kind of have a full year's of information now, and based solely on the four main hotels that we have in town now. So it's really good not to have to supplement it with other hotels and that. So those are our accurate numbers, I guess, for 2019. Our occupancy was at 64.5%, which equates to supply for the whole year is 131,765 room nights. Our ADR, which is your average daily rate for 2019, was $108.30. And then revenue per available room is $69.81. And revenue overall, basically sold 84,933 room nights for the year, which brought in $9.2 million for the hoteliers. And then transient guest tax was collected on 61,326 rooms, which is about 28% of the overall revenue that was brought in that we collected transient guest tax on. So for a total about 531,000 last year. Obviously, like this year, what I'm saying, they're expecting anywhere between 30 and 40% downturn on that funding. So we'll see how that plays out in the months to come.
Okay.
The first quarter started out really good for our area. I mean, it was really up in that, but I'm sure we don't have the latest numbers in that. We'll get them the first part of May, but I look for them to be down considerably. Next slide, please.
Ms. Lee?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Lee, this is Commissioner Preisinger. Quick question. Maybe I heard it wrong, but on the transient guest tax collected, I thought you said 28% paid it, but it's 28% are exempt, so 72% paid transient guest tax. Am I correct in that?
28% of the rooms were transient guest tax.
So 72%.
Were
Yeah,
paid, yes.
okay, so 72% paid. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. These are our attended trade shows that we were at last year, 9 of them. And this year, obviously, a few of them through the summer here have been postponed or canceled and that, but it sounds like especially the group travel is doubling up on some of theirs and holding two at one location to try and recoup some of their showcases and that, so we'll see how that goes. There was supposed to be two of the trade shows this year. We're gonna be in Kansas. One was gonna be in Topeka in April, and the other one is August down in Wichita. So far they've kind of rearranged things in that, and they're holding two of them together down in Wichita in August. So, and we'll see whether that one gets postponed or moved again. But anyway, so far they haven't moved it. So as far as I know, it's still gonna be held. We had 25 group tours to Leavenworth last year, 7 meetings. We've had more meetings than that, but these are the ones that we were directly involved with. The direct economic impact, then we track each group that comes to town, and if they do a Harvey Girl dinner, or if they use guides, or if they do, whatever they do and we arrange for. So that direct economic impact is exactly what they brought into the community. But then down below that, obviously, we keep track of how many people were in town as well. So, about 2,300 people or so. And just an average, if they spent $75 per day, that comes out to $179,550. And then also using that multiplier, if you take that times the 214,000 people that were in town. So just kind of gives us an idea. Those obviously are, they could go up or down a little bit, or even the visitors, or it's their estimated numbers. So
That's it.
Next slide.
Ms. Lee, this is Mayor Griswold. That's a pretty significant economic impact in terms of, I didn't realize it was $75 per day. Is that just like a best practice metric, or is that something that for Leavenworth, or is that something for other cities also?
Yeah, each city basically comes up with their own
Metric?
day figure and overnight figure and so basically that's kind of an average of both, because the day figure is a little bit lower and obviously the overnight figure is a little bit higher. So the $75 was an average. So if you want in the future, I can break that out versus day and overnight. But then I need some other way to try and figure out, maybe just use the hoteliers as the overnights then or something, and see if I can come up with some different figures to make that a little bit more cleaner moving forward. But yes, that's averages.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you bet. Local updates on the COVID as far as 19 here in town. I've added a website page that includes a lot of information on our restaurants and our retail stores, and that all in one location. It also has links to the different economic development things that people can apply for, latest information on that. So hopefully that's being accessed. I put it on Facebook and it was getting quite a few hits on it. And again, there at the bottom, you'll see that I have a link to Destinations International and their COVID-19 partner resource pages. And again, there's just a ton of information on there that has a lot of statistics and more if anybody would be interested. A couple of things that key findings as of April 20th. 34.1% think the situation will improve in the U.S. in the next month or so. 22.5% said that taking a trip would be among their top activities once things settle down. But some of the top 5 things then are going out for dinner, hanging out with friends, shopping, obviously, and then going on a trip. So that was 22.5% of the survey. And then 51.2% continue to feel that they will be traveling by fall. And reported increases in travel plans for September and October already are kind of taking place within some of those statistics and that. So interesting. I mean, hopefully, I mean, everybody is possessed, or they're definitely wanting this to be over and trying to, you know, have a positive outlook on everything. So social media wise, we've just been sharing a lot of the area Facebook posts, the live shopping with Lou, Soul Supply, Candle Queen, Euro Pottery, and others, trying to share most all of those live shopping experiences, promoting the 5 ways to help small businesses, and that put a video together. And that actually has done really well as far as the reach and then the shares on it and that. So I think it kind of hit home with a lot of people. Oh, these are some great ways to possibly help the small businesses in that. So that went really well, and a lot of shares on it. And it continues to be shared right now. So those numbers, I think, were from last Thursday or Thursday when I put this together, but it's above that now. So that's good. But just a lot of sharing of local information on Facebook, and trying to encourage people, if they can afford it, to go out and order out at least maybe once a week if they can for meals or something, and shopping if they can afford it as well. So just continuing to try and get that information out there. Local occupancy. I did call around and visit with some of the local hoteliers and that on Wednesday, April 15th, just to kind of get an idea of where they stand and how they're feeling everything's going. And 3 of them reported back to me that they are currently in double digits as far as their occupancy. 1 is still only at 5 to 7%. So just they said just this week, or which was last week now, that they felt their first slight improvement in the numbers or the percentages as far as going up. So I thought that was good. Mainly they said it's a lot of construction people that are staying at their hotels and that. So I found that kind of interesting, but that's what they attributed most of their occupancy to. So okay. 1 also mentioned that they thought they could start bringing some of their staff back starting this week and that. So, and then that most all of them have taken advantage in one way or another of some of the different loans available out
That's
there.
good. That's Ms. Lee, this is Mayor Griswold. That's good. That's good feedback from the hotels and the staff that you talked to, and particularly on that last point in terms of taking advantage of the, you know, through the idle loan that's available directly from the Small Business Administration, and then the Paycheck Protection Program loans that, you know, were part of that CARES Act from 2-3 weeks ago. So that's good feedback. I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, I agree.
Ms. Lee, this is Kamala Leonhardt, Commissioner Kamala Leonhardt. Do you think maybe the slight increase for the daily occupancy could be due to also the Planners 2 project that are having to house the individuals since they're redoing the apartments?
Yes, well, that was the one that was at the highest actually, as far as occupancy and that. So that did help. Yes, definitely with their occupancy.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Next slide, please. Some of the trade shows that I did attend before this occurred. The ABA was the TAC Day on the Hill, and then Pear Day actually was canceled, so didn't go to that one. So, and then some of the trade shows and conferences that are happening yet or have moved around a little bit. Like I said, the one that was supposed to be in Topeka is now moved to November 6th and 9th in Georgia. The Missouri Bank Travel, that's canceled. Midwest Travel, St. Cloud, actually, they were just talking about it yesterday, and they will probably cancel that one for this year. So that one will probably be canceled. Fair Day, I think, I haven't heard yet about the August one. Obviously, the one in April was canceled. Going on Faith, that's the one that I was talking about in Wichita, and they've moved one of them, Boomers and Group, I believe, is going to be there or held at the same time. So they're trying to kind of double up on those small market meetings. TIAC conference is going to be in Liberal this year, and then the KSAE will be in Topeka in December. So
Okay.
Next slide, please. Just some of we did have our first round of the year for our Transient Guest Tax grants that we do. We do our 2 rounds a year, February 1st and then August 1st. So far, February 1st, the First City Film Group, which that event did get canceled, so that was at 1500s. The Erin Yoon Photography, I've not heard from her of whether she was going to continue with her project or not, but she was awarded 1500. The Historical Society was 3,000, Leavenworth Main Street for 3,000, Richard Allen Cultural Center for 3,000, and then the C.W. Parker for 2,500, and then Santa Fe Trails for 3,000. And that was for the Cool Hand Luke, which has been moved to the October 4th. So that will still be taking place. And again, just the dates to remember that are coming up for some of the milestones in the area, and that just to kind of keep you aware of them.
Ms. Lee, this is Mayor Griswold on the transient guest tax grants. I know the First City Film Festival had to be canceled, but there was a $1,500 grant. Did that grant still go to First City Film Festival that could be used next year, or did we keep it at your level, or what happened with that particular grant, I guess is my question.
I guess that funding is still there. So I know last year, the year before, she applied for something in both rounds. So if, say, towards the end, you have 1 year to use those funding.
Okay.
To use that funding. So there's technically, if she starts to promote her event, because she usually holds it in March every year, and so that amount would be good through February of next year. So
okay. That's good.
If she starts promoting her event, and say January, February, she can certainly apply for those funds.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, thanks. Next slide, please. And just my last slide, basically kind of showing some of our partners in the tourism arena. We work with a lot of people and that to try and get the word out there on all there is to see and do in Leavenworth and that, and just wanted to say a thank you to all of them. I think we've got a lot of great partners out there, so I just really appreciate everybody. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those, and if not.
Any questions for Ms. Lee from my fellow commissioners?
Ms. Lee, this is Commissioner Leonhardt. Oh.
Go ahead, Commissioner Leonhardt first, and then Commissioner Preisinger.
Am I? Okay, I'm on. Okay.
You're good.
Ms. Lee, CBB, just want to commend you. You guys always do just such a great job. I think the historical markers tour will be, I did that tour myself, and it's real easy to do on your cell phone, and there's so much information, especially if it's going to be a nice day. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. We're gonna put some kind of spin on it and put a hashtag and that, on it for the Travel and Tourism Week and that. So we'll come up with something fun for everybody to do, and it'll last a whole week, the 3rd through the 9th.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the great work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Preisinger?
Although the hotel occupancy is way down from what it normally is, I think it's actually better than most of the hotels in the Kansas City area, which I don't want to brag about that. I think it's terrible to brag about it, but I think some of the major hotels in Kansas City, Missouri, I think may have shut down for the time being. At least we have some action there, so that's helpful. I'm glad that you have reported now that when you do the statistical analysis on hotels, that it's just our 4 main hotels, the 2 Hilton projects and 2 Marriott projects. In the past, it was a couple of those hotels, and then 2 from outside the area, then 3, then 1 from outside the area. They had to be online for a year and a half or whatever period it is. So the numbers that you're getting now, it's statistical analysis, very, very accurate for our city, which is very, very helpful, because you have to have 4 in there for your association.
Correct.
And I did check the Homeland Security website. Real ID has been extended to October 1st, 2021. Okay. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good report.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you, Ms. Lee. Good report, and best to you and your team.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christy. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go on to the third of 4 topics, and the next topic is review of identified stormwater projects, and it's either the city manager and or Mr. McDonald.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, this is Paul Kramer, the city manager. And then we also have our Public Works Director, Mike McDonald. We're gonna tag team this issue. I'll start off, about 16 months ago, the city started collecting the stormwater utility fee. In 2018, the commission adopted Charter Ordinance 58, establishing that stormwater utility fee as a dedicated revenue source to address the maintenance, repair, and replacement of critical stormwater infrastructure in the city. What we wanted to do tonight is talk to you a little bit about where the program is, where it's been over the last 16 months, and where it's going over the next couple years. I'm going to go through just a little bit of the first page of this policy report, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director and anybody on his team to go through the 3 attachments and give you a little bit more detail about how we process stormwater projects that come to the city. So I'm happy to report that in the first 16 months, the city has either completed construction on, has pending or active construction or active design, approved design on 20 projects throughout the community. $1.687 million worth of projects have been completed within the first 16 months since the project has been awarded. Additionally, about $2.6 million worth of projects have already been designed and are awaiting. As a reminder, the city brings in about $1.25 million a year toward this fee. So in the first 16 months, we've essentially spent every dollar that's come in on projects throughout the community. We have developed an intake process for these projects. Staff has identified countless projects, which again, I'll let the Public Works Director get into, and then talk a little bit about how we go about that. I will note that when he gets to the second attachment of Mr. McDonald, you will see that when city staff and the city commission made this decision some 3 years ago to go down this road, we knew that the projects would come to us fast and furiously, and they have. We have 100 projects identified through staff or through residents, and that does not include some other projects related to corrugated metal pipe or stone arches that we know exist out there. So I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director to give us a little bit of view from his office on how we intake projects and then how they work their way through the system. And then he's going to share a little bit of some of the success projects we've had, some pictures at the end. So Mr. McDonald, if you'll take it away.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, it has been very interesting in the last year. If you remember, we showed a map of where we thought all of the projects were. I think once the program started, if people felt comfortable identifying their concerns to us, I think we've doubled the number of projects. So we had to try to find a way to prioritize them. We did try to address the ones that we knew were just, we call them the orange fence projects. Someone's had a hole in their yard or their street or the park for a long, long time, and we never had the resources to address it. So we put together the first 2 orange fence projects, basically designed by city staff and advertised out. There was, I think there was about 10 separate locations in those. And then after those, the projects get a little more complicated, and the next round of orange fence projects, we do have an engineer contracted to do the design. But we have pursued other projects which were enumerated by the city manager earlier in the policy report. One of the things that we wanted to do is find a way to have at least some system that we could prioritize the projects that came in. And we tried to keep it as straightforward and relatively simple as we could. And we identified the 7 factors that are in the bottom of the first page of the policy report. Health and safety, how many people does this actually impact? Are we endangering other infrastructure like roads or other sewer systems and such? If there is in fact a failure, is it creating environmental impact, or is it simply a road that would have to be closed for a period of time? And some of these projects have gone on for a long, long time. And what kind of system are they in? And with that, we assigned points, which is the second page of the policy report. There's a category ratings. This was quite the topic of debate. Of how do you relatively prioritize things? And we tried to make sure that the health and safety wasn't, it's the area with the single highest number of points, and everything else would put down underneath that. The rating of the projects is done by our staff, primarily Mike Egan and the construction engineer tech inspection folks. They are somewhat further away from a project discussion that we have with the city manager, with the city commissioners, and perhaps it's a less influenced rating on their part based on what they know. We created that matrix, and then we took the projects, and we've got this list of approximately 100 projects that have come to our attention. There's some color coding that goes in this. I don't claim to know all of it, what it all actually makes sense, but there is a guide at the bottom of the 100th project of what the different shades mean. But you can see how staff try to allocate points based on the understanding of the projects. And we use that as a guide to select the kind of the next group of projects, or to bring to the commission projects that are larger, such as a second chestnut type project, that we can show how it fits in the larger group of projects. We've also had to deal with some emergency repairs, primarily what come to mind are Lemon Street by the job service building, and a similar problem at Ottawa. Both of those were basically designed and handled out of our office, working closely with our staff and the contractors are moving right along. So here's the group of the projects. Not all of them have ratings at this time, but eventually we believe that they will, and we look at these on a regular basis. We put together just some representative projects. This 3118 Iowa, I think, was actually a 2018 project. The before picture, there's a series of
I have to ask you something. What is the feedback? I keep hearing feedback like you're an echo. I don't know what's going on here, but I can't understand what you're saying because I hear the echo.
I do too. Commissioner Leonhardt.
Say again, Commissioner Leonhardt, say again.
Echo. There's an echo.
Okay.
And when Mike echo, and I don't know if it's in the commission room or what it is, but when he's trying to talk, I don't understand what he's saying.
Okay. Here, I'll mute
Commissioner
us.
Leonhardt, I'm right with Commissioner Bowder. Yeah, it's an echo, and it breaks up.
Well, there's nothing on in this office except the ventilation fan. I've turned it off. I don't know if that will help or not.
It does. It sounds like you're.
You sound okay now?
Sounds good now.
Yeah,
It
that's
must
good.
be the background noise.
Yeah.
So, okay, I can go back over,
Have us muted.
or I can't. If you have
I'm
questions,
following. It's okay. It's okay. Just keep going. All right.
the matrix is there. It's our interpretation of the projects that we have brought to our attention. We provided some representative pictures of projects. The first one is 3118 Iowa. This was actually, I think, a 2018 project, and it was a corrugated metal pipe, a series of giant holes through along the side yard of the house that you see. We removed the pipe, we extended it into the existing drainage system, and then we replaced the yard. What you see in the after picture is is a blanket we put over there to promote the seed growth and reduce the erosion.
Nice.
This project, 509 South 17th Street, was a failed inlet structure to undermine the end of the pavement. There were some pretty good drop-offs and holes. We removed all of that and replaced it. You can see a dramatic difference there. It works like it was intended to.
Good.
The project at 1203 Cherokee, that was a steep drop-off into a really awkward stormwater inlet right next to a power pole. We had to essentially recreate the ditch, and we extended the pipe to the south. You can see the riprap in the after picture to get the water into the system and then release it where it was supposed to be and avoid the dangerous deep ditch we have here on a heavily traveled street. The project at 1316 Kansas was another corrugated metal pipe that ran between two houses. You can't see it real well in the before picture, but it's very shallow, and it was very much full of holes. And as essentially we removed it and replaced it with new pipe, regraded and reseeded the yards.
Very good. Yeah.
1210 Washington, it was a metal pipe across the road and a whole series of holes around the inlet. We removed all of that, put down new pipe and new inlet, and it is a much different environment now, and had several people comment on how much better it looks, and it works a lot better as well. So this is basically what we've been doing for the last 18 months, 24 months in anticipation of the commission approving the stormwater fee. We wanted to find meaningful projects, take care of some ones that had been bothering folks for a long time, as well as tackle some serious projects that need to be done through particularly like the Second Chestnut project impacts a large part of the community.
I'm going to go around to the commissioners and ask if each of us have some feedback from Mr. McDonald, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Leonhard. Any comments or questions on Mr. McDonald's presentation?
Yes, Commissioner Leonhard. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I know several of these projects, and there's some that, of course, you didn't show all the pictures, which is fine. But the one on Washington, I was really impressed with because, yeah, that looked like, you know, the street could have possibly caved in from underneath. And then the one on McDonald Road was really impressive too, the before and after. But you did a great job. They're all looking great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Preisinger?
Okay, you're breaking up, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me? This is
I can hear you now. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
I can.
Thanks for the report, Mr. McDonald. If the 100 projects that you have listed there, if you had to make a rough guess, we broke the city into 4 quadrants with 10th Avenue being 10th Street, 10th Avenue being north, east-west, being north-south, or the intersection there being northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, those 4 quadrants. If you had to make a wild guess, I'm sure it's not 25% of the projects in each quadrant, but where are they heavily concentrated, or are they less heavily concentrated?
I think you see most of the. I think you'd see most of the projects concentrated where we have a lot of metal pipe, which is kind of the middle half of the city, as well as those parts of the city generally northeast or the northeast third, where we have stone arch structures that have suffered from lack of maintenance for 100 years, basically. So I think you see a preponderance of these overlapping probably in the middle. Somewhere we have a map, we put little color dots on them to try to get a sense of that. I don't have that with me this evening.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Bowder?
Yeah, I just want to say that this was such a need. I mean, I'm so glad that we got the stormwater fee to help pay for these, because it is just amazing the numbers of failures we have through the city in regard to these. Anyway, I think you're doing a great job, and I am really, I think the community sees it and they're impressed too. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Mayor Griswold. My comments are, first of all, I think it's a really good system you've come up with as far as the prioritization of these many projects, and I applaud Mr. McDonald and his staff for coming up with that system. It makes a lot of sense, and you know, I know that there's an overall rating, but there's some other probably not maybe not some things that go into which projects. I mean, I know that the higher the rating, Mr. McDonald, I guess the greater we think the problem is, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, but it's good. I like the system. The other thing I was going to say is we've done, you and the city have done a pretty good job with the website, right? As far as at least having one of the web pages on the city's website devoted to the whole stormwater management program, correct?
We tried to keep up. It's hurting cats, but being that as it's in the city manager's office and high profile, we tried to keep it current as often as we can.
Can citizens on that particular web page of our website report a problem or not?
I think there's multiple places on the webpage to report problems. I don't know specifically on the stormwater page.
Okay. And then the other thing I was going to say is, you know, I think that the pictures are pretty dramatic, the before and after photographs that you shared with us. And I know that last year there were probably several emergency projects, but the big one was at Lemon and 2nd Street last year. That was a really big project and an emergency project that was dealt with, and that looks great now. And then the other one this year was at Ottawa Street, did you say? We had an emergency there?
9th in Ottawa.
Okay. And that's been taken care of?
Yes, they're finishing up in the next 2 or 3 days. They started, I think, middle of last week or late last week.
And do you hear anything when we do these projects that are in and around people's homes? Do you ever get any feedback, you know, informal feedback that, you know, things are better, you know, or is there any feedback that you get?
I always ask my staff or the contractor how they're getting along with the neighbors, and my staff doesn't usually have too much to report other than they talk to the people in this house here or that house there. But the contractors, they spend a lot more time out there, and they report really favorable comments from people whose yards they're in the back of tearing up. Sometimes they can find the opportunity to do additional work. One case, they had to store some dirt on a yard, and the fellow said, "Would you take out the shed foundation?" And you know, so they worked it out.
Okay.
That sort of thing. But we ask the contractor that all the time, and they report positive interactions.
Well, good. It's anecdotal, but it's good to know. And I don't have any further questions. It was a good rundown. And Ms. Leonard?
Commissioner Leonhardt, yeah, I have another statement or question. Who's the one that designed the little signs, I guess, that you put in when the project's completed? Is that correct?
Yes, we presented some ideas of other signs that were simple and effective, and worked with the city manager's office to find the one that we believe best represents our program.
No, I really like it a lot, and then it shows the community, if they're driving by, you know, where the money's going. They can see the finished product. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
They started putting those up this week.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good technique and a good procedure to follow. So unless there are other questions or comments, that completes the third item, and we have one more. It's the review 2019 through 2024 KDHE Stormwater Permit and Stormwater Management Program.
This will also be our Public Works Director. I'll let him start from the beginning on this one. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. This is a subject we've talked about in the past from time to time, but this is what we are required to prepare as part of the stormwater regulations that come from the EPA down to Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and that we get to implement them. This is what is called the Stormwater Management Program, which is essentially how the city puts in a document that says how we will manage water quality issues within the city of Leavenworth. The whole stormwater permitting thing really came out of environmental actions throughout the country, national effort in the 60s and 70s. And as the lawsuits associated with EPA's actions were resolved, essentially in about the year 1999, they started issuing regulations relating to stormwater, particularly for the smaller communities. They had already issued regulations that were in effect for really large communities like Kansas City, Missouri, huge population centers on the east and west coasts. But these current regulations are known as Phase 2. Essentially, they relate to cities' populations in excess of 10,000 people. There's a lot of background. I won't go into all of it. I've provided some links to the documents. We have a current stormwater management program. You'll see it abbreviated as SMP. And basically, these are things that we have said and brought to the commission essentially annually for several years. And so we're going to do things like this. We're going to sweep the streets. So we're going to have a recycling operation, or lots of things that ultimately work to keep the water clean. One of the things that came out of the lawsuits is that the EPA really cannot regulate directly water quality in streams, but they can regulate your activities that impact water quality in streams. So you end up with this kind of awkward thing, the stormwater management program. The outcome of all of the hullabaloo that led up to the issuance of the Phase 2 regulations is they identified there are 6 primary categories of things what we do to address water quality, and they're shown at the bottom of the first page of the policy report. And these are fairly broad brush, and there's some overlap, but your public education and outreach, public participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, that is if somebody's dumping something in the water that they should not, construction site runoff control, and that is your whole silt fence thing is the short version of that story. Post-construction runoff control is where we've worked with owners to make sure they have to maintain their silt fence so they get their grass to grow. If they have a detention basin, they have to mow the grass in it. And we've got a little program set up to have annual meetings to address that sort of thing. And then one's called pollution prevention and good housekeeping, and that is a look inward on kind of what we do ourselves to set good examples and make a meaningful difference in water quality. Submit these reports annually to KDHE. They make a point to never comment on them. They won't tell you whether they liked your report or they didn't like your report, or whether you had good ideas or anything. And it's very frustrating, but that's part of their with the EPA is that because they do not link arms and walk together down this path. They have different views of things. But KDHE says you have to turn in your report, and they give you broad guidelines on what to put in it. Well, that was a great plan until there was another lawsuit that settled it out that basically gave the EPA a little more power over the states and what needed to be in the reports that we submit annually. And if you're a student of the federal bureaucracy, you will know that it really started hard in the Obama years, but it was already coming. They wanted more fact-based information. How many tons of this did you do, or how many miles of that do you have, and less flowery words and nice language. And so the EPA says we want things that are yes or no. We want to know what you're doing, and we want to basically, we're going to score you on that. Fought that for years, and ultimately the state lost. And so now the new permit, the one that was issued in 2019, is a points-based permit. It's still got the same 6 minimum control measures, except now everything in the minimum control measures has a point value. And you have to get so many points within so many years. And kind of the time frame for this is the city needs to revise the stormwater management program that we have to reflect the new permit that we have. We need to spend the year 2020 doing that and implement the revisions beginning of the year 2021. Okay, that sounds easy enough, but there's some weirdness in here. The KDHE has said quite emphatically that there are no other BMPs to be created than the ones that they show in the permit. You would think, okay, if we're gonna have a program that works for us, it's kind of unique to us, something. If it doesn't fit into one of their specific identified best management practices, and I didn't define this real well earlier, each of the minimum control measures, the 6 categories, there are things you can do within them that are called best management practices. The idea being, if you do all of the things that you should do, you have a positive impact on water quality. But the state said, here's the things that you can do. You have to choose from this list. And that's weird. But we've been doing a lot. The city has really stepped up its game since the EPA came to help us in 2012. And we've started a lot of programs, and we're documenting the programs that we were always doing that were difficult to document when the EPA was here. And we're fairly confident that we can meet the new point guidelines with their identified BMPs. In fact, we expect we will exceed them. And so I asked the state about, well, can we just do the minimum required? And they said, basically, no, you cannot. You have to do the best you can with what you have. And if it appears that you have chosen to reduce programs in an effort to drop your points down to what you need, they'll start out with a sternly worded letter, and it gets worse from there, which I thought was interesting. I think they know that communities that are doing a good job are going to be able to meet their requirements relatively straightforwardly. And then if you read all of this permit stuff very closely, you'll see there are you get points for attending functions where 100 people may be exposed to your material, say at a county fair or a Chamber of Commerce dinner or something. And I asked KDHE about that, and they said they designed enough points in their system that even the small communities or the very lightly populated counties, they'll have some ability to get the number of points they need to meet their permit. We think that they'll be able to do that. We believe, we had reviewed this earlier in the year before the whole COVID thing came, and we believe that there are plenty of points for the city to use, I guess, or to take into the plan. So we believe that the new permits or the new SMP is going to look a lot like the old one, but it's going to be focused on getting the points and not inadvertently dropping things that we already do. KDHE and EPA both continually stress that the public has to have the opportunity for involvement. There's no requirement for public hearing. Basically, they want to know that the public can make suggestions to the commissioners, and commissioners will bring them to staff, or they can comment to staff on the webpage, or they can send us a letter the old-fashioned way. And we have to preserve that we have that evidence that the public was involved in being aware of what we're doing, not necessarily actively participating in it, but that they're aware of it and they've had the opportunity to participate. So what does this mean for us? We expect to have similar related discussions, perhaps monthly over the next few months, to identify the BMPs that we believe that we do or can do that will meet the points rate requirements for KDHE, and discuss that with the commission. Based on the discussion that would come out of that, we would come back with a draft stormwater management program on the information we received, feedback from the commissioners or the public or our own staff. Perhaps we would have the opportunity for the public to meet, if that opportunity presents itself, to meet to discuss stormwater. They may not want to talk about permitting and points and all that. They may have other things they want to talk about, and that's fine too. But if the opportunity is there to do that, we would plan on doing that. So perhaps it will be 3 additional meetings with the commission and an adoption of the stormwater management program before the end of the year, so that we can begin implementing it in the year 2021. And that's the short version, and I'd be happy to talk about all of that and more.
This is Commissioner Griswold. When does the update for 2020, the stormwater management program, need to be into KDHE? Is it like next October or November, or when is that?
It has to be in place by the end of the calendar year. Okay. And adopted by the commission. I believe it may be November. Okay. But it has to be, we have to send in an annual report every February, and it has to be included in that at an absolute minimum. Okay.
No, I see the continuity for those of us who've been on the commission. I think Commissioner Leonhard, this is her first year, but I obviously see the consistency with the stormwater management program documentation that you brought to us in the previous 2 years. So this is very familiar to me, and there may be some change based on your briefing to us. There may be some changes for this 2020 program plan, but it makes sense to me. So I see if any of my fellow commissioners have any comments, beginning with Commissioner Leonhard.
No comments.
Okay.
Commissioner Leonhard.
Commissioner Preisinger.
Commissioner Preisinger, no particular comments. I know that Mr. McDonald knows the matter very, very well and does a good job in keeping us up to date on it and knowing the intricacies of it. And I don't have the brain power to understand all the intricacies and the bureaucracy, but Mr. McDonald does an excellent job along with his staff. Thank you.
Yes. Good. Commissioner Bowder?
No, good presentation. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, and good. I agree with all those comments, and you and your folks are doing a good job on this particular important program, including all the reporting requirements. So just keep it up, and thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. If you don't have anything else, I guess that anything else, Mr. McDonald? Okay, So we're good to go. That's the fourth and last topic for today's study session. So what I'm going to do is go around the horn and ask for comments from my fellow commissioners, and we'll begin with Commissioner Leonhard.
Commissioner Leonhard, I just want to put a shout out and thank you to Kathy Walter. She's a Lady Knight, which I am too, of Knights of Columbus. And she reached out to me, Nicole Fredericks, and Margaret Bales got together, and Margaret Bales was making masks, and Kathy and Nicole paid for the masks and material, and they reached out to me to give them a couple contacts to reach out, and they were going to donate to some organizations. So I just want to say a big thank you to them for that. And then also, I just had something, in conclusion, spring is in the air. I look around and notice that Mother Nature has taken her paintbrush out. Green grass, beautiful flowers. People's lawns and landscaping are looking great. I have seen and heard a lot of different birds and a lot of people walking their dogs. Everyone stay strong, stay positive. Citizens of Leavenworth County, we are in this together. We will get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonhard. Commissioner Preisinger?
I just want to, thank all the citizens of Leavenworth, various businesses, the many unsung heroes in the community that have done so many things. As Commissioner Leonhard mentioned, a couple of people there. There's other people in the community too. We're all in this together. Hopefully the end is in sight, but I do continue to ask that everyone be as safe as possible, follow the guidelines from the CDC and the medical professionals. I feel that they know what they're doing, and it's an unfortunate situation, but I think we'll get through it if we practice all the things that they recommend that we do. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Preisinger. Commissioner Bowder?
Yes, as part of my United Way duties, this morning I set up a meeting with 21 different organizations in Leavenworth County, mostly to discuss what their immediate needs are, their long-term challenges and needs, and how their annual budgets are impacted by all of this. The thing is, you look at the stats, and Leavenworth County, compared to other counties, doesn't have a lot of actual cases. But on the other hand, we've got a huge number of people who are without jobs right now. And that is impacting all of our organizations. They're feeling the stress, they're feeling the strain. And I think the sharing was a good thing. Plus, I will put together a spreadsheet, which I'll share with you and others in our community to see, because there are certain things that you just don't think about that people need, like diapers. There's apparently, it's hard for people to get diapers and wipes and things like that for children. So there are a lot of things. One of our the Women's Community Y takes care of children of first responders and essential employees. And they're constantly having to work with the issues of distancing and that sort of thing. So it's a multifaceted issues in our community, and we're trying to pull together to help each other with that. So thank you to everyone who attended the meeting this morning, and I just wanted to let the city know that we've got some really good people here.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowder. Thank you, Commissioner Bowder. And I echo all the comments from my fellow commissioners, and this community is together and doing its very, very best and doing a good job meeting and dealing with the challenges of this COVID-19 health crisis and the economic strain that many of our families and residents are feeling. In that regard, I've been having a weekly Facebook Live town hall, and we will have the 6th Facebook Live town hall focused on COVID-19 and the the fight against the spread of that particular disease and virus. That'll be tomorrow, Wednesday, at 11 a.m. And our guest expert, who's going to come and talk for a bit and also answer questions if the viewers or the participants in the town hall have questions, will be Mr. Keith Ricard from the Guidance Center, and looking forward to having him. And the whole thing about mental health and behavioral health is very, very important during this particular crisis that we're in, as it always is, but particularly now when so much has changed, and there are stresses to our families and residents as we try to get through this very unprecedented crisis. I think I'm going to end. We, as commissioners, we get a lot of emails from various organizations, but one of the organizations we get emails from is the Mid-America Regional Council, MARC, which is a very important council with respect to economic development and other things that impact our metro area. And they did send out one, I think yesterday, or maybe it was today, and it just announced the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is going to be celebrated tomorrow, April 22nd. And just a little background on this Earth Day. In 1970, a bold show of support for defending our public health from the effects of pollution coalesced around like-minded conservative and progressive lawmakers who were alarmed by deteriorating environmental conditions. Teaming up with student activists, they organized demonstrations and teach-ins that would eventually become Earth Day. And it's a worldwide movement that would bring in environmental stakeholders, faith groups, and other community organizations. In the end, it was a common cause of public health and the long-term impacts that 150 years of industrial development was having on it that brought so many disparate groups together. And despite this momentous milestone, 2020 is also a year of great public concern, as we've talked about, and precautionary social distancing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This has caused most Earth Day celebrations and cleanups to be postponed or canceled. So even though we're not coming together to celebrate as planned, there are still ways to be involved in Earth Day 2020 from home, and there's a bunch of ideas that individuals and families can do, and they said to go to a website called recyclespot.org, recyclespot.org. So there's things that can be done. A lot of them are virtual, but there are some things that, for instance, they mentioned one near and dear to my heart, picking up litter around your neighborhood or a local park. Lace up your sneakers and turn it into an exercise by going on a plog. I'm not sure what that acronym stands for, but be careful to maintain a safe distance and use a grabber or wear gloves and mask. And you got to be safe, particularly if you're picking up trash along one of our streets. But that's a good one that's not virtual. That particularly with not having been able to do our spring cleanup, maybe that's one that people can do, because I do see a lot of people out walking, and maybe they can multitask and do a little bit of picking up litter around our neighborhoods and in the local parks if need be. So with that, I do not have anything further, and we have our next meeting will be next Tuesday, and it'll be a normal regular business meeting. And for those of you in the that are listening or viewing the meeting tonight, or are going to participate or at least view our Facebook Live Town Hall tomorrow, we'll meet you there. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and end tonight's study session. Thank you.